If you're learning how to shoot a handgun, there's a lot of mistakes that are very easy to fall into when you're just starting out. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about some beginner handgun mistakes and how to avoid them. First on our list is poor stance. Now, before you even present your pistol to the target, you gotta place your feet properly. And a lot of times what you'll see people do is that they'll place their feet like right next to each other. The problem with this is that you're not giving yourself a wide enough or firm enough base to stand on. And this is going to make it easier for some external force to upset your balance. And that external force in our case is of course going to be the gun's recoil. The other part of poor stance is leaning backward, and all that's going to do is it's going to shift your center of gravity further backward, and that'll just make it that much easier for the gun's recoil just to keep on pushing you backward. So to fix poor stance, what you want to do is you're going to start with your feet spread apart just wider than shoulder width. And then I like to kind of kick my right foot back just a little bit, and that's going to help me kind of prop myself up from behind and help me push back into the recoil. The next thing is to lean forward a little bit. You want to push back into that recoil, because you got to remember that the mass of your own body is way greater than the mass of your pistol and the force of the recoil combined. So you're going to use it to tell your gun what's up, and you're not going to let that recoil literally push you around. Improper arm position. When you actually go to present your pistol to the target, you don't want to completely lock your arms out in front of you, because you're just going to get way too rigid. You're going to be all tensed up, and that's going to make it harder to manage the recoil. You also don't want to be holding the gun too close to you, because this is going to make it way more difficult to control, and it's going to be harder to align your sights on target. Heck, the muzzle could even come back and smack you in the forehead if you have the grip strength of a fish, okay? So it's bad. Just don't do it. Don't hold the gun too close to you. So what you want to do is you want to mostly extend your arms, but you want to keep a slight bend in them. And that bend is going to kind of act like a shock absorber, and it'll help soak up a little bit of that recoil. And this is going to help you manage the recoil better, and you'll be able to get your sights back on target quicker for your next shot. The next beginner mistake on our list is not hitting the like button on this video. Okay, maybe it's not exactly a mistake, but you should still hit the like button anyway. The next actual mistake on our list is poor grip. A lot of times what you see beginner shooters do is they'll grip the gun way too low, like that. The problem with this is that there's all this space in here between the top of your hand and the tang, this part of the grip right here, it's called the tang. There's all this space in there. And this is going to allow the gun to rotate backward in your hand as it recoils. So what you want to do is get your hand as high up on the grip as possible. See how there's just no space in between the top of my hand and the tang of the grip. This is going to lock the gun down in my hand, and it's going to prevent it from rotating backward as it recoils. You also want to be gripping your gun with both hands, because that will add another point of contact, and it's going to be a much more stable platform to shoot from. The other big thing to avoid is do not take your support hand and grip your wrist like that. This does absolutely nothing for you, because look, my wrist is still free to flail around wherever it wants. So this does absolutely nothing for you, and you might as well just shoot with one hand if you're going to try to grip your gun like this. What you need to do is take your dominant hand, grip the gun tightly, then take your support hand, wrap it around your dominant hand like so, keeping your thumbs as high up on that frame as possible. Another thing that I like to do is I'll kind of push forward a little bit into the gun with my dominant hand, and then I'll pull backward against that with my support hand. And what happens is these opposing forces kind of lock the gun down into my grip. It also helps to lock my wrists, because you absolutely do not want to be limp wristing your gun, because that can cause a malfunction. So we just saw that with a semi-auto handgun, you'll want to ride your thumbs as high up on that frame as possible. But what if you're shooting a revolver? Well, with a revolver, you actually got to do the exact opposite, because on a revolver, you've got a gap in between the front of your cylinder and the barrel. And as that round goes off, there's going to be all kinds of gases that are escaping from that gap. And if you got your thumb up there, yeah, you're going to be missing the tip of your thumb. So to avoid that, you want to keep your thumbs tucked down low like that. And that's going to keep them well away from the danger zone. Anticipating the shot. Now, this happens when you drive the muzzle of the gun down before you actually take the shot. because you're anticipating the force of the recoil. Now that impulse to drive the muzzle down isn't a bad thing in and of itself. It's actually in the timing of that impulse where the mistake happens. Now once you take that shot, the muzzle is of course going to begin to rise a little bit with the recoil. If you can time the impulse to push the muzzle down so that it happens after the shot has gone off while the muzzle's rising, you're actually pushing the gun back onto target and you'll be able to get a follow-up shot off quicker. To fix shot anticipation, you're going to want to do a bunch of dry fire drills. So all you're going to do is you're going to practice squeezing the trigger, keeping your sights aligned on target without recoil in the mix. And then once you've got that muscle memory down, you should find it a lot easier to deal with shot anticipation when you're actually sending live rounds downrange. Poor trigger control. Now, this all starts with where you're placing your finger on the trigger, because a lot of times what you'll see people do is they're shoving their finger too far into the trigger guard, or else they're just barely making contact with the trigger with the tip of their finger. You want to place the trigger right in the middle of the pad on your finger before your first joint. And then you want to keep your finger as perpendicular to the trigger as possible. That's going to help you pull it straight back and avoid pulling it off target to the left or to the right. You also need to shoot from the wall of the trigger. So what the wall is, on a semi-automatic handgun trigger, you've got some travel in the trigger where it moves kind of freely, and then you hit a point where you need to start applying the 5 pounds or whatever your trigger's pull weight is that's needed to discharge the gun. This is the wall of the trigger. So what you want to do is quickly take up the slack in the trigger until you hit the wall, and then squeeze. Don't jerk the trigger, squeeze it straight back until it breaks and the gun discharges. Now that you know how to deal with these beginner handgun mistakes, you're going to want to check out the next video to learn how to avoid some common concealed carry mistakes.